Okay, thank you everyone for coming. This presentation will be in English because we are broadcasting outside the campus. I know that there is no problem here, but feel free to ask anything in Portuguese and we translate if it's necessary. Okay. It's a great pleasure for us to have here Dr. Rustad from Equinor. Alf holds a PhD in mathematics, and he joined Equinor after working during many years as a math professor at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, and he is devoting the last decade to open source code development, mainly in application for simulation in open in porous media. A topic with extreme relevance to petroleum studies, as everyone here knows. But before asking Alf to start his presentation, I would like to ask to Alessandra Davolio, she's a researcher in the CEPETRO, to talk a little bit about CEPETRO and EPIC, and why we firmly believe that this is a very good opportunity to young students and research. Alessandra is a former student of this institute. In fact, is a former undergraduate student of mine, a student that everyone is proud. So, Alessandra, please.
Thank you very much. Very kind words. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm Alessandra. I think most of you already know me, but for those who do not know me, I'm actually currently the Vice Director of CEPETRO. And Rustad invited me to talk a little bit about CEPETRO. Sorry for those who already know this slide, but I have to stand it, so don't worry, okay? Alright, so yeah, so that's a map view of the campus, and well, I know you're very familiar with that. And we are here, so CEPETRO is here. We have 5 buildings inside the campus, so most of them are here just beside Fulcam. And there's just one lab that is here that a little bit far away from the main complex. So this is some numbers about Miniclub. So as everyone here, I believe, is from Miniclub, so I don't need to explain all of this for you. But there are 2 things that I would like to enhance here that's connected to CEPETRO. The first thing concerns the resources. So as we are a public institution, we know that the majority of our resource comes from the state of São Paulo, Birger, but we do have a very important amount that comes from external funding. And CEPETRO is a key piece in Miniclub to bring this type of amount. We have, as we're going to see through this next slide, we have several projects, we have big collaboration with the industry, and this is very important for us and for the university in general. The other thing that I would like to mention in this slide, sorry, I'm a bit lost here, is this thing. So what we are. So Miniclub will have 21 interdisciplinary centers. So CEPETRO is one of these 21 centers, okay? And we are dedicated to interdisciplinary research. So what we do basically, we gather people from the university, so we have different professors from different institutes and schools, and we gather those people to do interdisciplinary research. Okay, so that's the main goal of the center. And of course, we're very connected with society, currently, the agencies such as ANP. We have a very strong relation with the ANP as well. So CEPETRO was founded in 1987. So this year we are celebrating 36 years. So it's a long history, and we are very known in the industry and also in the academia by everything that we have in terms of, especially in terms of research. So these are the 4 pillars of the center. So the first one I just said. The other one is the dissemination of knowledge. So that's one of our goals, to promote the dissemination of knowledge for the petroleum and energy society in general. The other thing is education and training, because we have in CEPETRO a lot of students that join our research projects. So they receive the scholarships through this project. They do their research, their PhD, master, and undergrad research projects using our infrastructure in terms of labs and so on. So we're very committed to education and training. Of course, this is a partnership with the other institutes in Miniclub. Well, the last one is consumer research, but this is a more like on-demand work. These are some basically the main research lines we have in the center. I'm not going to read all of these, but the main thing that I would like to enhance is that because of historical reasons, most of them is related to oil and gas exploration and production. So basically that's our past and that's what we are very specialized. But now we are following the energy transition, and now we are also adding some new lines such as new energies, CCUS, of course data science that is a really hot topic today, you know, for me. The other thing that I would like to mention in the slide is that all of these talks will have people with very different backgrounds working in the several projects we have in the center. So we have people like me, I'm a mathematician. By the way, that's the place where my master defense happened. So I'm a mathematician, applied mathematician. We have physicists, geophysicists, geologists, engineers in general. So there are a lot of people with different backgrounds who are working with these topics. This is just to give a flavor about our main partnerships. Sorry, because this guy's good, but I'm showing this is a map of the partnership support we have received since 2006. So we have Petrobras, again for historical reasons, and Petrobras is our main partner. The second one is Shell. Then the third one is Equinor, which we have some colleagues here in Equinor today. Then we have Repsol, FAPESP, Petronas, and then there are other also other companies and agencies. So basically we have so these are very important collaborations we have. They are, I would say, the major companies that are producing oil and gas in Brazil. I brought some numbers just to show, to enhance what I'm saying, that we have a lot of people involved in that. So these are the current numbers from March 2023. So these are the number of students that are doing the research in our project. So we have, for instance, 21 undergrads, 23 masters, 52 PhDs, 52 postdocs, and 33 researchers. So this is very nice because there are some of our students, they come to do their master and PhD, and they like to work with research. So we have this opportunity to hire them in the project, and they work as a researcher to connect to these projects that we have. So we have, in terms of infrastructure, we have, oh sorry about this, it's very bad for my slides. Anyway, we have 47 labs, and 10 of them, which are here, they are what's called internal labs, and they are located in one of those 5 buildings I showed in the very beginning. So I'm not going to read all of it here, sorry, but I can leave these slides if you're interested. And then the other 37 labs, so they are these tables, and I know you cannot read it, but the idea is just to mention that they are spread in the campus. So we have one lab here in UNIMAC, we also have some labs in the Computing Institute, the School of Engineering, the Electrical Engineering, and so on. So these are all laboratories that are collaborating with us. They have projects running together with us. The last thing about CEPET I'd like to mention is that we have attached to us in what we call Engineering Research Center. So these are kind of, although it's called a research center, they are basically a very big project, like an umbrella project, right? So the name comes from FAPESP, and this project is always when we have this type of project, is always sponsored by FAPESP and the company. And CEPET has 2. First one, this was the first one here, which is partnership between FAPESP and Shell, and this one, EPIC, is a collaboration between FAPESP and Equinor. Of course, we can't do that. So, and today, we are very proud to say that, well, the talk we're going to have, just after mine, is about, it's connected to EPIC, right? So that's this research. So I brought some very few slides to conclude my presentation to talk about EPIC, but I have to say that I'm not really connected to EPIC at this moment. I'll be in the next phase. So I don't have all the information, but feel free to make questions. I'll try to answer. If not, I have some colleagues that can help. Okay. Yes, Yes, so these slides are from Professor Davis. So he's a full professor in the School of Mechanical Engineering, and he's the director of the center of that. Well, as I said, so this is a collaboration between Miniclub, Equinor, and Timestep. Of course, each of these institutions, they have their interest, their own interest. So Miniclub on research and innovation, teaching, technology dissemination. Equinor, of course, as a company, an energy company, has a goal to improve their efficiency, increase reservoir recovery, and student production, and reduce capex. And Timestep, as you know, our agency to promote research, is very interested in all complex, world-class research, technology transfer, and knowledge dissemination. So this type of project aims to connect all of this. The mission of this research center is to develop research and innovation in energy and natural research. And the idea is to put students and research to face the new challenges in petroleum engineering, natural gas, and energy research. So EPIC has this ambition to be recognized as an international research and innovation center in the energy and natural research. So these are the three research lines we're having at today. I have to mention that we are in phase, so these are the research lines of phase 1. So we are at the last year, so 2023. There is an automatic something behind it. So 2023 is the last year of EPIC. So we are at this moment renewing the project, so we are negotiating with Equinor how the new phase is going to be. But I can say that these research lines, they will be kept, and some of the activities related to that will be even enhanced. One thing that I would like to mention is that the first one, reservoir management, that's the one that is related to the reservoir simulation models, to the numerical models, which is the top of the next topic. Okay, that's for me to conclude again. All right. So sorry again. So in the last slide again, insist on that. Again, I would like to mention the aspect of the multidisciplinary aspect of EPIC. So we have again people with different backgrounds working on this project. So from engineers, geophysicists, geologists, data scientists, and so on. These are some pictures of the infrastructure that EPIC has. So these are basically the labs we have in that I showed in the beginning. So you are very welcome to visit us. If you don't know St. Patrick, you can go there and we can show you our labs and so on. This is my last slide, again to give a flavor of how big EPIC is. So today in phase 1 we have 12 professors, 26 research and postdocs, 47 students, and then some technicians and administrative people. So we have almost 100 people working only on this project. So it is a very big project. As I said in the beginning, it's a kind of umbrella project where we have different professors with different background. And again, this is a very nice opportunity for students who are interested on working on topics related to energy and oil and gas production and exploration. Okay, so that's what we have for phase 1. And phase 2, we might increase these numbers a little bit. Well, so that's my last slide. Thank you for your attention. I was supposed to give you some emails, but anyway, at least the link for our website is there, so please visit us. And there are some contact details on the website, so you can send an email anytime you want. This is davolio@unicamp.br is my personal email, so feel free to contact me if you want to make any questions you would like. Okay? If I cannot answer, I'm sure I'll look for someone who can. Okay? So thank you, Sam, for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Alessandra. I would suggest to leave the questions for Alessandra for the question section just after Alf's talk. Okay? So now it's a pleasure to invite Alf to the floor, and Alf will talk about open source simulation research in Equinor. Alf, please.
Thank you. So very happy to be here. We're not that many either, so as we go along, I think we can do questions. We can do some discussions as we go along. Since I have quite a bit of time, I think.
Okay, still we have time.
Right. I would like to start with a little story that I think is, at least for me, it's quite telling. And then it's been a long while since I had a blackboard, so I will take the opportunity to use the blackboard. The cubic equation. I guess you've all maybe seen it, maybe quite a few of you even have seen the formula for solving it. Does anybody remember that formula? No. It's quite horrendous. But how did it come about? How was it discovered? Actually, it's attributed to an Italian mathematician called Scipione del Ferro. And this was end of 15th century. We actually don't know because he kept the solution secret. Actually, probably Archimedes already knew a couple hundred years before Christ, but that's a different story. A lot of that got lost during the Roman Empire time. Only when he was on his deathbed, he chose to share the formula with his student, Antonio Fiore. This was in 1526. And so what did Antonio Fiore do? Did he publish it? Some people claim even that the failure of publishing it was due to the fact that, well, there was no press, there was no printing press, right? But if you check out Gutenberg, he came up with a printing press around 1450, around 1500, but there was printing presses all across Europe. So it spread out very fast, so that's not a good excuse. However, Antonio Fiore, he used this knowledge to participate in competitions where he could win money prizes by solving cubic equations. And of course, Europe was heading out of the medieval times at this point. And the medieval times is sometimes called the Dark Ages. And this is not just because there was little sunlight. I think it had very little with sunlight. But I think this has a lot. So Antonio Fiore didn't publish it. It went even 20 more years before the solution was finally published. But Scipione del Ferro was actually attributed. I'm not sure it is certain that that's not. So you can imagine that science had kind of meager. It wasn't easy for science to thrive during the medieval times. People didn't share. People didn't publish. Even after the printing press was widely available, people still didn't publish. Approximately 100 years after actually the cubic equation solution was published, there was one man that came to birth. His name you all know, I guess, or I hope, Isaac Newton. And he came with this expression that he was, of course, he was huge. I mean, still is really a big name. But he said that he was standing on the shoulder of giants. So what did he mean by that? Of course, today we just take it like for granted that, well, he, of course, was other physicists, mathematicians before him. They didn't separate between physics and mathematics back then. And I think also today, some of the more interesting, physics and mathematics really meet. Especially, I hope I get some type of concept. So, I'm at least convinced that what Newton was alluding to was the fact that people started sharing, and this had only been for 100 years. people built upon what each other did. And today, if you want to do something scientific, publishing is the name of the game. And if you want to publish something, you better do some literature search and see if somebody has done it before you. Or if they haven't, maybe they'll know something similar, and you better give them some credit. You better build on what they've done instead of rehashing something already done, right? So this is kind of, in science we've been trained this way. That's the way it goes. And of course, after Newton, science just, the development of science has just accelerated ever since. It's quite amazing. So how is it that we now, in 2023, when it comes to developing source code, still haven't realized this? Look around us. Researchers publishing papers using implementations that are closed source. Nobody can investigate what they did. Nobody can reproduce what they did. Nobody can build upon what they did. Right? There's plenty of that in applied science these days. And of course the petroleum industry is an industry where there's a lot of money. So, and I think for you guys who are here now, I think I can say it since I'm in the industry. For you guys that are here now, I mean, Brazil is kind of where Norway was 30, 40 years back, when the oil age kind of started. Everything is ramping up. It's a fantastic people. I would highly recommend that to consider going into the oil industry or academia, because it opens up so many interesting problems. Of course, for me, it's kind of impossible to cover everything, but what I can say is that everything I've seen from advanced physics, I've seen again in the oil industry. It's of interest there. Even advanced laboratory measurements. CT scanners, maybe you know about. Of course, we scan our body in CT scanners of the hospital. I'll tell a little story there. You know, in Norway, salmon fish is quite big. I think we're the biggest in the world on salmon. So it's big business, not as big as oil, but it's the second largest industry in Norway. And of course, some people don't like the bones in the fish, so they want the fillet, right? But if you take out the fillet and you make care no bones are in the fillet, you may cut off quite a lot of the fish meat, right? That's not good for business. And you don't, ideally you want a machine to do this. So actually in Trondheim, where I'm from, the salmon industry, they went to the hospital there because they had medical CTs. And they scanned the salmon to see the bones in the body, to use that to calibrate the fillet machines. But unfortunately, the quality of the CT scan was a bit too poor. So they came down to our laboratory, the Equinor laboratory. We had medical CTs. We scanned the salmon. Perfect resolution. So if you buy Norwegian salmon fillet, you should think about this. I was told that it's not as bad as it sounds. I mean, it's not like everybody should go to the oil industry to get their body scanned. There is some differences between the salmons and the salmon. However, my story on Scipione del Ferro is, for me, it's quite obvious. I mean, at least in academia, and also preferably I'm doing research within an oil company. For me also, lots of things we do, we need software. I mean, all our problems are basically too advanced to just do a hand calculation. We need computers to help us. So we need implementations to solve all our computational problems. And when I came into the industry, all the softwares we had were proprietary closed source. People have published like many books. There is a vivid, there are separate research journals where most of the publications were based on these super expensive proprietary softwares that, I mean, if even if even old versions of the softwares are not available anymore, right? They discontinue a version of software and then nobody has access to it. So these publications back then, I think nobody is able to reproduce the results. And then I would question, what is the scientific value? How can we build on it? So I think we have to get there also on implementations. We have to start to think about reproducible science also on the implementation part. And that means we need to share the implementation so others can reproduce what we've done. But I think we even should start thinking about going one step further. We should make the implementation so that it's possible for others to build on what we've done. Because then we're kind of taking in the full power of what science has shown us now since Newton. And that's how this project that I'm planning to speak about came about. We wanted to solve this problem because we saw that we had. I'm sorry, move this. Yeah. So I'll just leave the webpage open there. You see the app. Maybe it's readable. opm-project.org. Go in and have a look. So this started practically a decade ago. And what we saw then was that it was very difficult for us working in the industry to collaborate with you guys who are at the university. There were some attempts. I would say the most prominent example was out of Stanford. Stanford, they know how to attract clever people. They just pay them enough money, and of course it's a prestigious university. So lots of the big names in reservoir simulation, Khalid Aziz, I remember, Udolovsky, these guys, they did Chelapi. I mean, you just got to Stanford and you kind of met all of them that you saw all the publications on. And then all these clever people gathered from around the world because they weren't locally from Stanford, of course. They were gathered all from the world. And then think about what they could accomplish there together on Stanford if they were willing to share what they did. So I'm going to be a bit mean with them. So, well, feel free to quote me. I have also tried to ask some of them directly, but maybe I'm not sure now. I don't know. These are years back, but they produced the most capable research reservoir simulator that was available anywhere. They called it GPRS, but it was closed source. If you wanted access to the source code, either you had to be affiliated to their department, or you could be a paying oil company. They had a joint interest project where oil companies could join, and then we could have access to the source code. But as I guess William, you can attest to, it's very hard for us to find time to program. We typically we collaborate with external research institutes where there are people that can really go down and spend their full days implementations. I even know example of professors who worked on the source code of GPRS. They got another position at another university and then they didn't have access to the code anymore. That's quite bad, I would say. And the worst thing of it is that GPRS, I shouldn't say crap, but I mean it was not useful. For the industry it was really not useful. We couldn't use it for anything. It was not capable of running a single full field model we had. Right? So what to do? Well, so this project was founded the main idea, the main kind of motivation was that let's try to bridge the gap. Let's try to see if we can enable the industry and academia to work directly together. We wanted to make an open source reservoir simulator that was capable of running industrial cases, that was capable to compete with the best proprietary reservoir simulators. That's quite an undertaking. because reservoir simulators are the most expensive software in the industry. So if you come out of the university and you don't work at a major oil company that already kind of pays the bills for you, let's say you want to start your own company, consultancy, or you want to do work for Petrobras or Equinor, or, and then of course if you want to do work for us, you need access to a reservoir simulator, right? So what do you think, anybody can, if you, let's say you want just one license of one capable reservoir simulator, be it CMG, Eclipse, Intersect, Key Navigator, whatever, can some of you guess? If you want one license, they won't allow you to buy a license, you can only rent it. But if you want one license for 1 year that you can use as much as you like, one license, what do you think that will cost you? Approximate number? Come on, give it a go. Just give a number. 150,000 real? Dollars? Actually, that's depending on which. That's actually what we're talking about. If you go shopping around and get one that is not fully capable, then yeah, you still they can easily push you back $100,000. And then you can't do anything with Equinor because we typically do uncertainty modeling. So we typically simulate on 100 models at the same time, maybe 200. And one license don't cut it. Right? So there was kind of a fundamental gap where if somebody in research did something good, we basically had to go to ask one of the big vendors like Birger, please implement this, we think it's good. Of course, nobody was able to test it on anything proper. So the chance that it actually was any good once you put it into the complex model was close to zero. And of course, if Birger found it interesting, then maybe they would actually say, yeah, implement this. And then you'll have to pay for the development. And there's a reason why they have good salaries. But today, I mean, OPM didn't really start with reservoir simulation, but it came on quite early. And today, the project is approximately 10 years old. I was one of the people starting the project, so I've been very enthusiastic about this for a long time. You can also see here one thing. I mean, if somebody of you are kind of afraid that, well, am I going into oil? Will the oil age stop? It won't stop anytime soon. You guys will be retired before. I mean, people tend these days, even if we succeed, there's getting all the world over to batteries, it will take time unless we ruin the planet. I don't think people realize this, how fundamentally challenging it is. But even then, I mean, oil is the most fantastic raw material there is. Approximately 20% of the world oil today, I believe it. Yeah. Please check the number, but I believe the correct number today is approximately 20% post-petrochemical industry. You can't make anything without oil. You can't make a cellular phone, you can't make a Tesla, you can't. I mean, without oil, the world would literally stop. Besides, if we want to use all our food production to create biofuel, I think that would also be a disaster. But okay, so I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not predicting the future now, but and I'm not trying to be a politician, but just sharing my perspective. But as you see here, the very latest news, well, maybe you actually don't see it. It's maybe not readable for you. The very latest publication that we promoted here on the web page is source code, which is not actually the reservoir simulation, but it typically provides input for reservoir simulation. And that's a code base called LBPM. And what it says here is fuel cell simulation. Fuel cells is one of the technologies that can help us over the green transition. And fuel cells, they actually also are models as porous medium. So they are you go in and work on the petroleum technology parts, your knowledge will be applicable also outside of petroleum. The problem is, there's no other industry with so deep pockets. So if you want a good salary and you want to work with super interesting problems, I would highly recommend petroleum. Okay, so I told you that reservoir simulators are quite expensive, right? So one of the things we had to do when we created the reservoir simulator in OPM, it's called Flow. So if you push the link here, you'll find that. You can also see there's some upscaling codes, and there is also this application called ResInsight, which is also quite important. Because when we started this, we wanted this simulator both to be available to academia, which means that the source code is open, it's all hosted on GitHub, patches are welcome. If one of you comes up with a good idea, and then you can send in a patch to the relevant OPM GitHub repository, and you will get a code review. Some of the seasoned developers will look at what you've done, and if they agree that yes, this actually brings Flow forward, they will give you a good review of the code, and it will be merged into the master branch. And you will even retain ownership to your piece of code. You will retain a copyright to your contribution. The way we share with each other is through the license, which is the same as Linux GPU. There we go. Yeah. So, but in order to make it applicable for an industry, we basically had to support the file formats that the leading industry reservoir simulators use, both on the input side and on the output side. Because otherwise engineers wouldn't touch it, and how can we run a fulfill model without being able to read in all the setup? And how many of you have done a reservoir simulation before? Quite few maybe? There we have, thank you. It's only one of you. So reservoir simulators, they are really beasts. I should probably, let's do, how much time do I have? Half an hour. I do think we do have time. I mean, this is my opportunity also to use the blackboard, right? Reservoir simulations, it's simply solving the flow equations in the hydrocarbon reservoir. A reservoir with oil and or gas and water. And it could also be things you inject there. It could be CO2, it could be foam, it could be whatever you think makes the production better. These are the set of equations, and this is Wikipedia, so you'll find them, or the most used equations, I should say. They're called the black oil equations, and they give a very simple description of the governing equations, but still they do capture the main effects typically. You know, hydrocarbons, oil and gas, they are, it's like, if you want to do it properly, you need a compositional simulation where you split out, they are all hydrocarbon molecules that approximately 90 different ones. But that's too time consuming to calculate. So even if we do compositional models, we typically group the components. But black oil is the simplest one. Then you say you just have two components. You have oil and gas, and they're allowed to mix with each other. And you put up governing equations. So this is just the term that tells you how much does it change over time if you're at one point in the reservoir. How much, and this is, the O here stands for the oil, so this is calculating the amount of oil at a particular point in the reservoir, and then differentiating with time. So then you see how much does the amount of oil change over one time unit there. And then you add here a term, that's the divergence. So Gus would probably be very happy about that. And these are the vectors of flow. So you have the oil that flows across this point in the reservoir, and then you have the amount of gas that's contained in the oil, that's resulting in the oil. So this is basically just the conservation of oil at one place in the reservoir. So if you take the change and you add on the divergence, you should get zero. And then you do the same thing for water and the same thing for gas. And that's it. But then you have a system of partial differential equations. Because here you differentiate in space, here you differentiate in time. And your main solution variables, it's the amount of oil, amount of water. If you have those, you can calculate the amount of gas, because they sum up to 1. And then you have these guys here, which through something called Darcy's law, says that, well, the flow speed here is depending on the pressure gradient. So you need to solve for pressure, and you need to solve for the fraction of oil and water. So that's your field solution variable. So this is a set of partial differential equations, and they turn out to be impossible to solve analytically. You cannot solve it. Only in very special cases. They are notable, so if you want to make a reservoir simulator, you should of course check the analytic cases. But if you go to 2D, there is just one analytic example that I can remember actually. But yeah. So if you have compressibility, which these equations typically do, and compressibility is typically important if you have gas in the reservoir, it's highly compressible. Then any analytic solution is out. And it turns out that these equations are super hard to solve numerically for realistic cases. That's why we don't do fully compositional. That's why we use this very simplified description of oil and gas. Because we need to make our life simpler when we solve these equations. So we need to solve it numerically, and typically we decide on the time step. We go out, and then what we use is, and if you want to understand something that's quite complex, it's always helpful to just go down to the very simple example. Oops. Of course, this is a multi-dimensional problem. I need to solve for saturations, these fractions of oil and water, and I need to solve for pressures in basically in all cells across a full model, which is typically hundreds of thousands, millions of variables I need to solve for. And that is a bit, but the principle is the same. I need to go further on with this one. Basically, you use Newton's method. Remember Newton? I guess you all have seen it. So then I have this function, and I want to find this. I want to find out when the function is 0, right? That's the thing. And then I start somewhere here. And then I'm not able to solve this equation. Only for very simple function expressions you can solve it analytically. It's very easy to set up a function you can't solve analytically, like we did there. And then Newton's method says, okay, but then assume, use a linear representation of the function instead, because that you can solve. Linear equations we know how to solve, right? So instead of finding the real 0 here, I find an approximation. And now I put n and n plus 1, because of course, when I get here, I can kind of repeat I can use that point again as the next one, and I can do multiple iterations. Yeah. And then basically what I need, if I want to know the derivative here, derivative of this function, this one, then it's basically, I think you can still see. Sorry, maybe I should go the other way around. And then, well, this one, yeah, it shouldn't. Oh. Of course, it's the linear representation I have here. So this one, I need to use this number, right? So this one is actually 0. I shouldn't call it f. It's the linear function that I'm using. And now I just solve for this number here. And then I should be able to do this correctly. I need to move that one up. And then I get, let's see here. Okay, allow me to do it in 2 steps. I should be a bit quick about this, so finally. This looks right. Check your textbook. Sorry about the time it took. It's good exercise for, oh, maybe you can't see it from behind there, but actually, yeah, let me just repeat And the reason why I would like to bring your attention to this one is because it's quite telling actually. What we typically do in reservoir simulation is that we do this stepping, this xn to xn plus 1. We do it on the time, and then it's called a time step. So we try with a time step, we go out in time, and then we try to calculate the flow in the reservoir during that time step. And this is just a very simple one-dimensional example, but it actually, if you go in and look at this, you can really track where the complexities are. One thing is this guy. You need the derivatives. You need to calculate them somehow. And in a multi-dimensional setting, this is typically a Jacobian matrix. A big one, huge Jacobian matrix. And calculating the Jacobian matrix, well, we are optimizing parts of the code, but I think, like a thumb rule, you can think about that as being 1/3 of the computational time. But then you see here I need to invert. Also, it's in the denominator. So you're setting up this as a linear system. Of course, we've now instead of solving these full equations, we have instead set it up as a linear system. So everything is discretized, and then you need to solve a linear system. So you have a huge matrix that you need to invert. There is no method that will allow you to invert it directly. Not for only very, very simple examples. Because that matrix is just too complex. And then you have the technique of preconditioning. Preconditioning is basically you just transform the variables to make the matrix a little bit easier to solve. And there are many methods to do that. Like multiplet, for instance. So, and then when you've done that, then you have a system that you actually can solve. And then you typically do that with a linear solver. There are also a selection of those in the literature and different retro simulation simulators, even capable ones. They use quite different setups for this. So it's a very fascinating field to look into. And if you look at the linear solver then, and the preconditioner, a little depending on methods, I would also say a thumb rule is that they also each take half of the time. So then you're, depends on the method. And everything always depends. We have to be able to say something. So I would say the construction of the Jacobian matrix, you can think of that as a third of the time, and then the preconditioning a third of the time, and then the linear solver a third of the time. And then of course we're working to make all of those faster, so the fractions change a bit. And now what I wanted to do, I wanted to actually do a live demo, so you can actually see how this looks. So that if you're curious, you can go down, you can go to the OPM project website, and you can actually click the download button there, and then you'll find out that you can install this on any computer you want. Basically, it's possible to install Flow on just about any operating system. Not the very cheapest version of Windows because it's crippled, but probably through the university you have access to not the very most basic Windows one. You'll find instructions on that there. If you go with Linux, then there are packages available for that. There's also packages available for Ubuntu, but then you need to go with the long-term support releases. Take the very latest and greatest Ubuntu, you may have to compile yourself. But I highly recommend doing that too. I think it's a very good exercise. So, of course I cheated. I've already downloaded and compiled everything. Otherwise I wouldn't have time to show you anything. So let's give it a go. There is one repository you'll find on GitHub which we call OPM tests. We use it for regression testing of a simulator flow. But basically those are a huge collection of, they even have, there we go. These are basically a huge collection of data sets. We probably need to give a folder structure on this. This is on GitHub, you can download those too. And here you can find examples of all kinds of strange things we need to model in the reservoir. If you go and click in and you can look, there are text files. The input files are text files. So if I now bring up one, let's go here. Is this readable? Hopefully it is. I can just do a listing here, and then you see the same as you saw because I downloaded it locally. You can see the same folder as here on GitHub. The most well-known reference cases in the industry is the so-called SPE cases, Society of Petroleum Engineers. They have created a suite of 10 different cases, which again have some sub-cases. The 11th is on its way, it's going to be on CO2. But nobody thought about making these data sets open. So we actually had to recreate all the data sets. And they are now shared here under the open database license. So now you know what you can do with it. I'm just gonna go here and look at the SP1 case. And like I said,
we use these for regression testing. And of course, the simplest thing to do if you want to do something is just to take something that already runs and works and just change it a little. So you see here, people have done that. They've taken the original UFSP case 1 and SP case 2, and they have created a lot of subcases to test various things. And for some of you, these abbreviations probably tell you something. For others, not thermal, that's kind of universal. The temperature in it, which it does have originally. To test the temperature on the inflow. Now, if I want to run this, then let's have a brief, let's have a brief look at the case first. So, because this input to the reservoir simulator is actually just a text file. So you can open it in your favorite editor, WordPad if that's your thing, and then you can actually read it. And here you see it's copyright text, so this was back in the days when we were not called Equinor, but we were called Statoil. So basically we contributed this data set, we created it from scratch. Yes. And here you see a license header, it tells you which license, and you can now immediately see that the 2 dashes means that it's a common file. So that's the most used file format for reservoir simulation is one used by Eclipse, Schumacher simulator, and this is the format it uses. So you have the keywords. You have keywords, and then you give. So this keyword is also quite self-explanatory. Dimensions. You see, it's the dimensions of the frame. 10 times 10 times 3 7. And then there's quite a lot the reservoir simulator needs to know, for instance, which phases is there. Oil, gas, water, and also dissolved gas. I don't have time to go through all of this, but you can download and look at it yourself. Now I'm just going to run it for you. So that's the SP2 case 2. So that's just, I'm just using the flow binary now, and it needs at least one input, which is then the file I'm going to run. And this goes really fast. This is a very small case, 10 times 10 times 3 cells. That's a very small case, so this is solved very quickly. And you can see here the simulator gives you some report about what it's doing. And of course here you can see Newton iterations. So you took 2 Newton iterations for this time step. And this time step was 30 days. And here you see linearizations, which is basically how many times did it calculate the Jacobian matrix. Then it says linear iterations, because at the end you need you have preconditioned the system and you need to use the linear solver, and it also is iterative. So this is just numerical stuff, and there it's done and it reports how fast it goes. However, if you go here to now, if I don't, I probably need to. There's too many files here. Let me just do the ones that I run here. So you see now we don't only have the data file, we have a number of new files. Yes?
Yes. Can you use the CMG input data format also to run
It's the other way around. You can use this format in CMG.
Okay.
CMG has created converters. You can just drag and drop this file into CMG software and it will convert it on the fly.
Okay.
Yeah. IMAX that is. CMG of course have stars and different. Okay. So, but that's just the way it is. I mean, Schumacher has been the dominating market player. I think it's super cool to see that Petrobras went with preferentially CMG. They also have Eclipse licenses, but preferentially they went with CMG. So they're kind of trying to break up the market a bit. I think that's cool. But of course, open source is even better. So, but these files, well, the PRT file here is the exception. That you can open in a text editor, is a text file. But these other files here, this eGrid is the grid, these UNRSD, sorry, these are the 2 big ones. This one contains the cell values, this one contains the well vectors. Those are binary files, and they are, for historic reasons, they are created for Fortran. So they are Fortran binary files. And of course, for mere human beings, what can we do with these files? Not much. We can't read them in any sensible tool. And even if you do, it's a bit hard to understand how it's built up. That's why we use things like SSI. Remember? SSI, this other block here. So I have compiled it. So that's your graphical user interface. So it will open up all these files for you, so you don't have to handle them. So I can try to do that now. Oops, sorry about that. Let's see if we can I find my name. There it is. Yes. Thank you. So let's see here. Yes. Just open up this eGrid file. There we go. So here you can see the simulation we just run. I open it and you can see the full model, which is very simple. It's SP1 Dutch. So this maybe, so you see it's one injector, one producer, and the default here is now S oil, saturation of oil, so that's the fraction of oil in the cell. So it's number between 0 and 1, and that's the other oil is there. Here we have the same with gas. So I can look, an oil, of course, it starts with being almost oil-filled. There is some initial water saturation also. And then it's a gas injection study, so we can play the wheel here. This is the play button, like on the old CD players. Anybody remember those? Here you see, we're going through and you can see the dates and the years. So, and you can also see here that the oil is decreasing. Oil is being pushed to the producer. And if you go in on this one, you can also look at the curves. And I think I'm a bit short of time now, so I think I'll skip that. We also have provided command line tools that allows you to access these binary result files. There is what we call and yeah, they will actually, they can convert it to, if you want to, they can convert. They can extract like the saturations from this file and just print it out in the table of numbers. It can also extract the vectors from the summary file, so that if you just want to plot it in a spreadsheet or whatever, you can just get the numbers out of those files directly. Cut and paste it to whatever you please. Yes, I think I'm short of time now. There is a connection. Of course, the most important connection is that we do the industry standard file formats. So basically, the tools that are out there to do history matching, they integrate perfectly here. There's nothing to do. They all support the Eclipse file format. And there are open source alternatives. True. So in Equinor, I think this was triggered by the fact that people started believing in this OPM thing. Actually, people saw that, well, it can actually work. Human beings aren't that bad after all. So actually, we established years back a corporate IT strategy of open source. It went straight to the top. So basically, if you want to do some implementation and you don't want to open source it in a company, you should basically explain why. Because the default should be open source. And the history matching routines that we have developed internally over years, and I think we were, well, of course, others should judge that, but since I wasn't involved in that particular development, I do think with some credibility can say that we were pioneers on the history matching side. And that software is open source. You can download it, you can run it with default. There's nothing to it. The job file you need to give to it's even simpler because you don't have to do a license checkout to Eclipse. So avoid that part of the setup. But also the proprietary commercial tools that we will support the Eclipse setup. So if they integrate with Eclipse, they integrate with Flow. Last thing, the boat was an offer from Birger. They asked us if we wanted them to provide Flow in their cloud for us with their products. I think that was quite cool. I'm not sure what we're going to do with that request, but or that offer, but that's not up to me. I don't do the commercial stuff.
Are they keeping the software open or not?
They cannot do any. I mean, it's GPL. I mean, it's out there. It's like Linux. You can't close it.
No, I think it's a very good idea.
So, it seems like they have come to terms with it. So I think that's. And I think also, even though for me it's kind of strange that humanity still hasn't figured out that this proprietary stuff is. But of course, it's a money, right? It's an easy business model. You can sell licenses, and of course, people need to earn money. I do see that. But OPM, for those who, I mean, there is a software company that made this resin cell, and we kind of had to convince them that because they were making proprietary tools for customers, but they're a small software company, so they don't. And small software companies, for them to earn money on small tools, very difficult, because it seems like wherever you go, there's a monopolist. And I think this has to do with the fact that software, it only has development cost. There's no production cost. It's free to copy. It doesn't cost you anything. If you sell to 10 customers or 100 customers, there's no cost, additional cost. So whomever sells the most get an unfair advantage. And then it's, I mean, the others, they never get to catch up. And over time, this just leads to one big player in each category. So if I say photo, you say Adobe, right? And if I say office, you say Microsoft. And I think open source has been the only way to kind of disrupt these developing monopolies. Because if I say web browser, then you're a bit at a loss. It's not just Internet Explorer anymore. Even Internet Explorer is open source these days on the left. Any other questions? If we have time for all? I have time.
Let's thank Alf for this wonderful talk. Thank you. We have plenty of time. Please ask anything to Alf or Alexander. There is some from people who are here. So please.
Yes.
I have it.
Yes.
Thank you for a very nice presentation.
Thank you.
As we know, there is another open similar tools such as MATLAB Reservoir Simulation Toolbox, MRST.
Yes.
And in my knowledge, MRST in terms of the predicate is way more advanced. So what I in terms of the predicates, unstructured. So what I want to know, what is the advantage of OPM over MRST?
Well, if you go to MRST, you know, we did fund the development, and yours truly, I believe, was kind of responsible for them first going open source. But they are, I mean, the same developers, several of them are working on both MRST and Flow. So this, and you will find them listed on the OPM webpage as one of the. We're not that many open source projects, so we kind of we are tightly linked. So if I just scroll down here, you'll see related, and you'll find MRST here, right? Along with do example. And if you go to their website, you can just click this link. They basically say straight out that so they are kind of claiming to be able to do industrial examples now, but they're not. They basically say, if you want performance, go to OPM. MATLAB is for prototyping, and that's what kind of has been the. So for a student who want to test something real quick, then that can be a good thing, but also MRST has become quite complex. Flow is C++, through and through. And if you really want to learn well-programmed C++, OPM is the way to go. Very clever developers, they do very good code, and they will also contribute something, and it's and it's worthwhile. I mean, you're doing something good. You will also get a lot of good feedback. So, and C++ is made. I would claim C++ isn't only made for performance. It's also made for being able to handle a large code base effectively. But besides that, C++ is all about performance. So even Microsoft these days have kind of given up on their own C# and they're reprogramming everything to C++. Internally, they're still tricking others to use C#. They have stopped using it themselves because they made their own cloud and then they kind of have to eat their own dog food. And then it costs a lot of money to have crappy code that runs slow.
Another question. I know that there's a lot of people here from the reservoir engineering course. So please.
Yes.
In comparison with the reservoir simulators, how has any limitations today with the comparison, for example, with intersects or clicks or something that you see, okay, we already have to develop this way to take an advantage, or
I'm not sure I understand the question. I think, I mean, one thing is that we can't, of course, copy the others. I mean, we go our own way. So our implementations are, I mean, if you want to compare simulators, Flow is much more comparable to intersect than the clips because it's based on modern numerical principles. But one example, what we've heard through the rumor mill, but sometimes the rumor mill is true, is that Schumacher considered using, for the construction of the Jacobian matrix, which is kind of a big one, because that, as I mentioned, that takes a lot of the computational time. The rumor has it, they started out with a technique called automatic differentiation. That's instead of just doing this, what I did here, I just constructed a derivative manually, right? Sorry. It's the air conditioning. We don't have air conditioning where I come from. Here you see I calculate the derivative directly, right? This is the usual way, and I believe this is also the way Schumacher does it on Insect today. But there is this other way. I mean, in C++ you can have abstract data types. So you can have every variable can hold its own derivative. And then of course you know how to handle derivatives. Because you know if you add two variables, you know that the derivatives also add up. You have the kernel rule, so if you have a function of something, you also know how to calculate the ending derivative. And this is the idea behind automatic differentiation. You just do the very basic derivatives and all the others you calculate through the addition rule, kernel rule, chain rule, I mean. And then you kind of always have the derivatives and you also avoid the bugs along, I mean, it means calculating them manually, all of them, because I mentioned the Jacobian is huge, right? It's error-prone process. Automatic differentiation takes out quite a bit of that. Problem, on the other hand, is that it adds up the computational time. You have to do more computations. So for us, it was a gamble. But Stanford had done it on GPRS, published it. We liked it, and we went with it because we believed it would be better for the research. We did believe that it was going to be a performance hit for the industry. So, but if you want to make something that's good for both the industry and academia, you can't always let the industry have its way. So I think that's a good example. Schumacher, I believe, they, at the initial stage of Intersect, they maybe even implemented an AV approach, but they went performance issues, but this is just speculation. I mean, they should be asked that question. But as far as I know, they do the retest by now. We don't. And we've had a performance hit on that for several years. Just the last year, some clever people have figured out how we can do it super fast. These days, calculating assembly is far less than a third of the computational time. So it turned out that it didn't need to be a performance hog after all. Several years later. So what gives? Did that answer the question, or?
Yeah. Was it this way? And also the research and development is based on Norway, right?
No, that's not true. Definitely not true anymore. There has been research here at EPIC already for years. So, and we hope to expand on that. We hope that also, and we do have, we are also working with Petrobras to enable them to use flow instead of Eclipse, simply because they don't have enough Eclipse licenses. And if we collaborate on data sets, it's convenient to be able to, for them also it's an advantage. They can also possibly say some of their licenses. But also if you go to Norway, it's true that it had its starting point in Norway, so pretty much everybody in Norway that knows that is clever on resource simulation, they're already involved. So we kind of sucked up the whole community. But you saw here also Dumux and Dune, right? These are German. So Dumux came out of the University of Stuttgart. And if you go into the simulator code of flow, you'll find that the large part of it is copied from Dumux. So we have very close collaboration with them. It was not a hostile thing. It's just we've had many discussions with them to try to see if we can join forces. But we have a bit slightly directions. And then Dune, that came out of the university in Heidelberg. And that's a numerical solver framework. We don't make our own preconditioners and linear solvers. We have tested a number of packages, but Dune is the best. And we collaborated with them for a decade. So, there is one PhD student at Heidelberg 10 years ago who did his PhD creating the current algebraic multigrid preconditioner that's available in Dune. And for the last 5 years, he's been a full-time OPM developer, fully paid by the project. He's even running his own software company out of H-Town, Bavaria. Earning money, hiring. The last addition was actually a very nice woman from Argentina. But she moved to Germany. That's yeah. So but she has a home office here. I do think actually she, yeah. Well, so we have, and also we have TNO, which is the big research institute in Holland, the Netherlands. And they basically said straight out their strategy on resource simulation is flow. So they're trying to get all their researchers over to flow, and they have been important contributors to yeah, you see the neurons here. They have been important contributors to the code base for years already. And of course, we want to increase the community. Yeah. So we should probably put Epic there also. I think since we do have an established collaboration, which we're trying to expand. The code base of flow is super hard. Also, the SC side is quite hard. I mean, the C++ high performance code is quite abstract. So there are many things one can do. One can also be a user. One doesn't necessarily need to be a developer. There are many things one can test out, and we've also enabled Python wrappers. So you can actually access the restaurant simulator from Python scripts if you're not very well seasoned or not motivated to learn C++. So that I think that opens up on so many possibilities for doing research, even if you're not that programmer savvy. Yeah. Clever people we always need.
Yes. In which ways would you say that Equinor benefits from an open source project?
Apart from the license cost?
The license would be theirs.
Yes.
It's not just an average software.
Actually, I love this question, and I think it's a very important one. I think I'll give a personal answer. When I started to dedicate pretty much all my working time on this, it was not because I was motivated by saving some money on license fees. For me, it's not about the money. For me, it's about the way I started the talk. I really believe that this is the right way to go about it, and I want to accelerate the technology development, and I want to see the open source development model enable that. I want to see the same kind of rapid technology development on the software side as we've seen on the science side since we.
And you think that the company is also invested in
Corporate IT strategy, I'm not sure when it was established now, at least 5 years ago. So I know I have the chief engineer IT in the company on board on that. We've discussed it. Yes. So I'm quite proud of that. I think that, yeah, I think that's something that we believes can be quite proud of. And it also should make it a very attractive company for students to collaborate. Oh yes, and there is one university in Norway that kind of got all the master students in engineering, and that's that was kind of a national. We're not that big of a country, you know, so that was kind of a political decision that was placed in Trondheim, and that's also why I use research centers. So that's where you have this Norwegian University of Science and Technology, which is pretty much built up with MIT as a role model, and there, if you go to the restaurant simulation classes there, OPM Flow is what they use today.
the model happening, right?
Not commercial, but it's used in practice.
Yes, yes.
But you can earn money on it. That's important. There are three software companies listed there, and they have been earning very good money on OPM for many years.
Please.
Thank you for a nice presentation.
Thank you.
I want to see that if there is a kind of comparison between the OPM and other commercial software in speed, because
Yes.
I'm kind of working on the optimization process, and the optimization needs thousands
Oh
of
yes.
the
That's also a very
simulation
good
runs.
question.
And I want to see that, for example, if I use this software as the the main simulation software for my case, so how my case will be increasing the speed, so how much I can save the time.
Yes. Yeah, now I really like the way you framed the question in the end there. Implicitly, you kind of said, how much faster are you? I have to be honest. I mean, a software like Eclipse, many people like to backtalk Eclipse. I never do that. I have deep respect for the work that went into Eclipse.
done some really good things there. It's a really tough competitor. There are some things that will make it a big struggle. Like if you go to exotic EOR methods, they probably haven't had the time to optimize that properly. So then easily the simulator can be really slow. But if you use it on a relatively small full-fit model and it converges easily, it's just super fast. Even faster than Intersect on one process. And on some models it even scales well, so you can even run it on 16 CPUs. Still just as faster than Eclipse. The prime example of that is the only full-field model we've been allowed to share openly on OPM tests, which is from an oil field off on the Norwegian continental shelf called Luna. So if you look at that on GitHub there on OPM tests, you'll find Luna. We've made some varieties of it, but you'll quickly see what the base model is. It's a small model today. I mean, it was the model that the field actually used 10 years ago, but time has moved. So I wouldn't say it's very representative. But on a Luna model, I think there is, we have a publication even, I think, where we did comparative studies. Flow is faster than both Eclipse and Intersect on one CPU, and it scales better at least to one model than that was 60 processes. So it both was faster and scaled better. But that's a model we've been able to share with developers. It's been worked a lot on. When we encounter a new full-field model that we haven't used Flow on before, chances are we struggle numerically. Chances are there's something there we haven't seen before. We see that frequently. And then we have convergence issues, and then of course the computational time goes up. And also the simulation can just stop. If Flow cuts the timestep 10 times on the row, it will give up also. And we see that also happens. But so far, the models we've worked on for over time, we have been able to get the performance down, we've been able to work out the issues, and we've been able to create a resource simulator that's faster than both Eclipse and Intersect. And I would say typically, at least what I've seen so far, typically we scale better.
So you're more focused on getting the better result, maybe increase the accuracy, or you're just working for the, how to make it faster too?
I don't think I quite got the question.
No, by the things, for example, you
Voice from the fan over here. Yeah.
as you said, you're, for example, if you have some kind of convergence issue, so you're stopped the simulation, so you're looking for some answers, which is quiet and accurate, so you're just stop the simulation, try to use another way. So I mean that the way that the developer work for you is that you're looking for the best answer in the shortest time, or just the best answer, even doesn't matter, for example, takes.
Well, we are solving equations, and we typically do this on models that are used for decision making in the company, so investment decisions. So we need accuracy. There is a limit to how much tuning we can do. So for instance, mass balance, which is a typical tuning parameter to kind of avoid convergence issues and make it go super fast. It's really controversial for us to let the material balance error go up in the simulator, because then suddenly your volumes are way off in the end of the simulation, and suddenly you're making investment decisions on a new FPSO or something based on it, and that can be really. So we do need accuracy. So we just need to work out how we can solve the numerical issues and make it robust across cases. And this is an ongoing process. We're working very hard on that right now, where we have many models that we're working on at the same time, and we're seeing convergence issues. So expect that we're getting better at, on a broader selection of models, expect that we're going to get much better a couple of years from now. So that's all. Also, you mentioned optimization. We routinely, also for history matching, And any modeling, we want to have uncertainty. So we, as I mentioned at one point, we typically do 100 or even several hundred realizations, where we have uncertainty across a wide range of properties in the restaurant. And then it's not only about the computational speed of a model. Suddenly you need to be robust across an ensemble. And the structure of the model, like the position of surfaces, the position of faults, that's typically uncertain parameters that will play into this, so we allow them to move. And that creates very different sets that can really create convergence issues. So these different realizations can be very different to handle numerically. So that creates new challenges, and so that's one of the places where I think actually we are ahead of the proprietary simulators, because we worked a lot with bringing the numerical robustness to be good across an ensemble. I don't think any of the proprietary vendors have started that process. I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
Thank you for your initiative in terms of
I was not alone, I have to say.
Yes, but I know this discussion for a long time. But my question is related to some part of the petroleum industry that is not related to reservoir simulation. For example, multi-phase flow in turbines, platform processing.
Yes.
How OPM is can now handle with these problems, because sometimes you have simulation about the flow inside the tubings,
Yeah.
and as for example, you mentioned the simulator from Simulgene,
IMAX, stars,
intersect,
intersect. that's
flow,
true.
that the equations are included in the simulation.
Yes.
But there is other options like a explicit code or something like that.
Yeah.
What?
I think if you're talking about the well, then of course there we're doing different stuff, and I think that's definitely an area where there's room for a lot of research. Since if we are to wait for Schlumberger to test out stuff, that's going to be slow, and very often you need something capable to. I mean, if you want something realistic, well modeling is typically where academic simulators fail.
I can include, for example, I can couple some other simulation with OPM.
You can.
How easy?
How easy it is?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a broad question. That depends, of course. If you do it on the file level, it's very easy. You have the. I think the easiest coupling would be what people already do with Eclipse, is they manipulate the restart files. But you want to go into the well equations. And then the easiest would be to have somebody extend the Python wrappers to give you access to the well equations. And then you can just use a Python script to manipulate it and test stuff.
Okay.
Because it's possible to intervene the simulator on each time step before it does the Newton iterations.
Okay.
You can go in and you can change the internals of the simulator.
Some.
And then run the time step, and then do that again. And that I would say is the easiest one to couple.
Yes, that's the point. How easy
Yeah.
is to couple?
Because if you want to go in and you want to do things with the well equations, I think that's not too hard either. But of course, we already support multi-segment wells, and we support these ICDs, AICDs. Wells are already becoming beasts, and some of them need quite. We're already at the point where we actually need to set aside dedicated developers to try to solve the numerical solutions of the well equations. In my head, those should be easy, but they're surprisingly hard.
I think they did a question.
Yes.
Thanks for your good talk. So I just wondering, like, there is many commercial softwares
Yes.
Each
Yeah.
software has advantage and disadvantage.
Yeah.
So what is the disadvantage of OPM?
Disadvantage?
Or the problems
Oh my.
still?
You're
Yeah.
asking the wrong person. Okay, yeah, I would say there is, if I'm to take the disadvantage, I would say there is, compared to Eclipse, of course, there is lots of functionality we don't yet support. Which reminds me, I was planning to show you the manual, but I don't have to show it. I can tell. If you go to the Open Project webpage, you can download under documentation, you can download the flow manual. And it explains all these keywords that we saw in this SB1, case 1, case 2 file, where it's keyword, you remember dimensions, right? And then there is thousands of those keywords. It's amazing. So Eclipse is super feature rich. And the manual we already have made for flow, because of course Schumacher's manual is copyrighted, so we basically have to document so that people can get access to it. So that you can get access to it without an Eclipse license. It's already past 2,500 pages. So it's like a huge book, right? So, and still there's, I mean, for every keyword there are options, and some of these keywords, they have like 10, 20 options with different values you can use them. It's amazing. We probably never will support everything. So that's one disadvantage if you compare to Eclipse, of course. There will always be missing functionality. I would say that we've come so far that very often you can just do it in another way. I mean, if you have a fulfilled case now within an oil company, that's already in the file format, and there is some unsupported stuff there, I would say that you can typically use other keywords, other options, and accomplish approximately the same, very often. Not always. We have some multiple features that are simply missing. But, yeah. So, for instance, compared to Eclipse 100, we are missing quite a bit of the EOR methods. So we want foam and alkaline flooding and low salinity flooding, and I mean the Eclipse 100 has it all. We don't. But we do have quite a lot actually. We have CO2 injection, we have polymers, we have even salt precipitation. That's the latest achievement. And I think you need to go to Eclipse 300 to get salt precipitation. But if you go to CMG, they have also some strong sides from the chemistry part. Functionality there we are missing. STARS is well known to be the only capable simulator if you want to do steam injection, like in a heavy oil setting.
Okay.
And,
Any other question?
yeah. And what about the, as my colleague asked, like the efficiency and the accuracy of the results compared with other commercial software?
Yeah, so I didn't answer that appropriately, I guess. On the models we use flow on, I would say we typically are as fast as the competition or faster. And we compare typically with Eclipse and Intersect because that's what we use. So that's what I have access to compare with. More awkward with Intersect because then I have to convert the data set. And we are mostly using Eclipse still. But we've, for a number of cases, we have done the comparison also with Intersect. If we haven't seen the case before, chances are we struggle and then we can be much slower or even fail to run the case out. But on cases we have worked on, we typically were able to compete or even beat. Yes.
And what about the modeling complex hydraulic fracturing model? Like
Yes.
it's possible?
That's a big one. I think I can't give a complete answer to that, but actually, I mean, fractures are very hard to calculate. It's not RC flow, so the equations kind of break and they create numerical problems for the simulators. So one goes to dual porosity, permeability models, and so to try to remedy this. However, if you're talking about fracturing of a well as a well stimulation technique, which has become very important these days,
Yeah.
then if you go to resin side, there's actually some very fancy functionality there to use the well model. You basically, that was a publication that came out of ENI, an idea there, because the fracture it kind of is like a plane, which increases the productivity of your well, which has made it possible to go after these shale oil reservoirs. And then you can basically let the well just connect to a 2D plane in the model. And the RSI site has functionality there to generate the necessary input for such model, which you then can feed to Eclipse or Flow. So, and the RSI site has excellent documentation on it. So I would really advise you to go there and search for fracturing if you're interested. Have a look.
Thank you.
One last question. About the licensing, has any type of license different for example, academic use it and commercially use it? You mentioned
I would say if you do that split, if anybody does that split, it's not open source. I have an ongoing quarrel with my own company on that, because you'll find that Equinor has released some data sets under something they call Equinor Open Data License, but it's not open. I'm not going to give up until the appropriate people in the company rectify that. Either change the license or change the name of the license. It has a not for sale clause, and anything you're not allowed to sell cannot be open source. But also if you say only for academic use, it's not open source. That's not a restriction you can put on something and still call it open. So that's the short answer. So here, it's all open. You can basically do as you please, and you can definitely earn money on it.
But for example, you mentioned that Petrobras is working now with OPM.
Yes.
And
yeah.
How is this agreement for commercial use of the OPM? Has any different
there is no,
license?
they downloaded it themselves.
Yeah.
And yours truly helped them install it. So, no problem.
It's like Ubuntu.
Yes.
No restriction.
So they got it up and running on their clusters. Yeah.
All the functionalities are free.
Yes. And this is an important question. I mean, we chose also GPL for a reason, not to be an open core project. But the distributed copyright cannot tell spills the beans. If you have distributed copyright, that's every contributor retains ownership to their contribution. You can't really close the code, because then the GPL comes and bites you. So that's kind of it's like the Linux kernel. It's the same kernel.
And you have a notion of adoption of OPM inside companies, or is
Yes. Of course, no other company has any obligation to report to me. So it's only the hearsay. So they won't tell me what they're doing or not. Of course, I mentioned Petrobras, but I think one very noteworthy one is that last year we signed a joint industry project with Total, where methods, of course, they are deeply invested in Intersect. But and the project is to develop numerical methods. Of course, we don't have access to Intersect, and I mean, and the researchers doing the work, they don't have access to source code in Intersect. So if we are to test these methods anywhere, Flow is the only possibility. So it's quite cool to see Total is one of, it was Total and Chevron that went in partnership with Schlumberger to create Intersect. So it's quite cool to see them now come and try the OPM development. I think that's a nice one.
Okay, so I think that we can finish, and we thanks Alf again for the talk.